Hi, Jacob.
Hi, it's lovely to see you.
Too. Today I'm with Jacob Glickman. Jacob has a PsyD, LPC, and is our board president of the PAGPS. He is a clinical psychologist focusing on working with transgender and gender expansive care. He is a group therapist and an individual therapist where he deploys ACT modality and tabletop role-playing therapy. Jacob, welcome.
Thank you. It's so lovely to sit down with you, Harry.
So, Jacob, I've been speaking with the other board members, as you know, and I usually start off with some softball questions just to get everyone warmed up. And one of my first questions to them is what drew you into group therapy and what keeps you at it?
It's a great question. And I think it actually speaks to the tabletop role playing game TTRPG therapy that you mentioned. So I have always had a great love of games. I think play is our first language. And especially in queer communities and trans communities, the ability to play is one of our most important strengths, especially when there's so much hostility in the world. To be able to sit down with each other and tell stories, which is really what tabletop role playing games are. It is a group of people sitting down with somebody who is helping shape the narrative and everyone is telling their story as part of it. And so, as somebody who has always played tabletop role playing games, the most famous being Dungeons and Dragons, it almost is group therapy in a way. The same structure applies. You have, again, one person who's holding the frame of the narrative, which would be the dungeon master, game master, or the group therapist. You have everybody who's showing up as themselves, telling their story, either as player characters, PCs, or as members of the group. That sometimes you have some sort of like module that you're following, either a treatment module or treatment manual, or literally a game module or campaign. So there is this analogous kind of function that each serve. And then in becoming a psychologist and realizing, like, okay, group is a modality. There is this playfulness that can happen within it. And this modality that I love and have been playing with for years, we can utilize this actually to help people in this formal way. I think that was a light bulb moment for me, and it became my dissertation.
When I first heard you talking about Dungeons and Dragons as a therapeutic method for groups, it made so much sense to me.
It kind of goes back to narrative therapy, which goes back
Yeah.
to, I think, our first form of healing and connecting, which is telling each other stories. And that is, I think, one of the most ancient arts that humans have, language being one of our great superpowers as humans.
What do you think most people get wrong about group therapy?
I think most people think about group therapy almost as a stage and a performance. That I imagine for a lot of people, there is the feeling of like, I'm going to go into a room and I have to perform, either perform my grief, perform my trauma, or I have to perform the role of therapist and I have to help like hold other people's stuff. And I think this idea of almost like approaching group a little bit outside of yourself, the feeling of I can't be fully myself, I must project some image of myself because I'm being observed. And I think that there is this fear of being observed and fear of connecting that helps people kind of go into a situation feeling like they need to mask in some way, shape, or form, mask or project. And I feel like that is something that probably keeps a lot of people out of group spaces in the same way that I think it keeps people out of a lot of social situations is the fear of like, I'm going to have to perform XYZ self, or the fear of like, people are going to judge me or perceive me. And so I think in some ways, group again being analogous for the way we move through the world, that the same things that prevent people from living their day to day life are probably the same things that keep people from being in group. And I think the thing that people don't really fully realize is that group is a place to become more of yourself. It's a place to be seen and to see others. It's a place where you don't have to perform in all of these ways. And I think that's part of why group is so effective because it shows people there is this other way of being, this more authentic way of being. And then you can take this magic and take this skill and utilize it across different areas of your life. And I think that instead people assume, like, I'm going to have to take the mask I wear in other areas of my life and bring it into group. When in reality, it's the opposite. Group is the place to dismantle it.
I have never thought of it like that. People, because of their past experiences, they assume that it is a hostile place where they will have to be something different, as opposed to a place where they're reflected back correctly.
And that's the whole reason for group, because that is a safe space that you're able to experiment with being your truer self.
That's really wonderful. Okay, what's something that happens in a group that simply cannot happen in individual therapy?
I think that one of my favorite things about group is that you are journeying together. And I think using, again, like Dungeons and Dragons or using like therapeutic role playing games as a form of modality, it's the difference between playing a game like D&D one-on-one with just you and the dungeon master versus having a party with you. And if it's just you and the dungeon master, I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want. And also that there's something about like you don't have anyone on this journey with you in quite the same way, even if you have someone with you holding the frame, that you don't have like your companions, you don't have people that are bringing their own strengths and their own challenges, and that you are supporting each other in them. I think one of the great like bittersweetnesses about individual therapy is that there is always going to be this power imbalance, that is just part of the frame. As a feminist therapist, that's really important to keep in mind because even if you share all these identities with your clients, the idea of you are the one who is getting paid, you are the one who is holding all of this vulnerability, you are the one who is disclosing probably far less, you are the one who has this educational privilege, you are the one who has power in the room.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that it is our job to hold and to remember. It means then there's some parts that we can't quite access, that we can't share as vulnerably, that we can't be on the journey with the client in quite the same way as having a group of other people there to journey together. We ourselves, as the therapists, can't hold their hand in the way that we want to always, but others can, and we can create a space for that to happen.
I love it. Okay. Hold on one second.
Of course, with the
I'm like
sunbeams just
trying to
like
avoid the
streaming
sun getting
across.
in my face. I'm like, okay. All right. I love that. Okay. Yeah, the power imbalance also not mentioned, not by Donna, not by Tom or Brian. Okay. But absolutely. Okay. What role does PAGPS? Okay, let's pivot and let's talk about PAGPS. What role does it play in your professional life, and why does a society like this matter to the field?
So PAGPS was the first professional group that I was really involved in a major way. So I think I mentioned my dissertation earlier. So my dissertation chair, Dr. Virginia Brabender, is an incredible group therapist.
Wait.
Yeah,
Your chair is Virginia Brabender?
and she is so brilliant and so kind.
I have read many chapters of her book. It's such a good book. It's on my summer reading.
And she is so delightful. Like her book with April Fallon, I think they were like the co-authors for so much of their work together. And yeah, Dr. Braybender was not just a member of PAGPS, but has been the president before, like has been instrumental to this organization. So Dr. Virginia Braybender was my chair for my dissertation, who graciously knowing nothing about role-playing games was like, I will hold the group part, and we are going to find other nerds to come and sit on this committee with you, which we did. We found a lovely, lovely nerd, Dr. Brett Satterley, who is I think one of the most incredible people I've ever met. But so, as part of this process, I was in her group class, and she was like, "Come, look at this organization that I'm a part of, and I've been a part of for years and years and years, because I can tell that you really care about groups." And so she was the one who introduced me to PAGPS, and that's how I became like a student board member. So she matched us basically, and and that was in 2020, and I've been a part of PAGPS ever since. I was taught by one of these like amazing group practitioners, and also how do I continue to spread that love? I think PAGPS and the other local affiliates of the American Group Psychotherapy Association all over the country taught me we're not alone in doing this work. Not only not alone in Philadelphia, but not alone across the country, not alone across the world. And I think one of the most important things about PAGPS is that it gives you that sense of community and it helps open the next door, that you have someone who you talk to locally and they open the door to PAGPS, which then opens the door to the affiliate societies, which I know that you have like started interacting with the affiliate societies, and it opens the door to AGPA and to Connect, which is the big national conference, and it opens the door to international conferences, and you start realizing this work is being done everywhere. And how can we, in our little tiny corner, uphold a piece of it if it's just you in your private practice running your little group? How would you know that there is all of this support, these people across the world who are doing what you do?
Wow. I had no idea that your pedigree into the PAG was so special. Like I don't know why, but like Bravender, I wasn't pronouncing your name right. It's Bravender? Is that right? Okay. Yeah, I knew she was in Pennsylvania, but I don't know why. She just seems like someone who writes books. She's over there, you know?
I think it's one of the cool things. Like PGP had Dr. Mullen Lesh come and talk with us and do an all-day workshop. You have this international celebrity in group world And also, they're just a human, and they will come and they will talk to you, and you can learn from them and interact with them, and they will treat you as a colleague. And I think that's one of the cool things about this liminal space of like celebrity in therapy world. And the same with like Vinny being like a celebrity in D&D therapy world, and also just cool person that you can hang out with at Connect. We have so many special people in our community, and you can directly interact with them. You can get advice from them. And I think PAGPS opens those doors.
Something I've found, people who are group therapists or practice group therapy, they're different. They're really nice. They're very approachable. They seem very humble and grounded. That's what I experienced when I was at PGPA Connect.
I have to imagine that part of it is that it's a modality that draws people that want to be in connection. Because I think that is what makes group therapy so special is the connection. So it makes a lot of sense that the people that are drawn to it are also people who are like, yeah, this is important actually. Important for me professionally and important for me personally.
Okay. Okay. So this is my last, universal question, and then I'm going to go into specific questions that are
Ooh,
just for you. Okay.
let's do it.
If someone is sitting on the fence about joining a therapy group, what would you say to them?
I would say think about what you're looking for. That if, for example, you are looking for other people that share an identity, there's probably a group for that. If you're looking for, I want to make friends and I want to learn how to do this, there's a social skills group for that. If you say, like, I love Dungeons and Dragons or I love role playing games and I want to do therapy in a place where I feel a little bit of like home base coming into the room with me, there's a group for that. If it's like, I want to just work on interacting with people, or I want to feel like other people understand my experience, or I have this particular condition, like there's probably a group for that. And so I think that is for people going into therapy in general, and also for group therapy, really thinking about what do I want to get out of this? I think for most people, they're probably going into therapy because they want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, they want to feel connected. And I feel like group has this incredible ability to do it. Even if I'm not running the group for you, or Harry's not running the group for you, chances are if you go to PAGP and say, I'm looking for this, somebody is going to know somebody who can connect you with what you need. And I feel
Absolutely.
like that is really special, that network of care.
You specialize in mental health care for transgender, non binary, and gender expansive people. What does group therapy offer this community that is especially powerful?
Trans people like myself, we feel really alone right now. Trans folks are one of the most targeted minorities in the country and in the world right now. And I think one of the really big challenges are the ways in which we end up sort of self isolated. We're isolated because we can't find anybody else who shares our experience. And I think that for a lot of trans folks, the internet is how people make connections, find other people who share their experience. And also, depending on where you live, you may not know anybody else in your life who is like in person who is trans and shares your experience. You may not have anybody to ask and to be like, hey, I am experiencing this 6 months into taking testosterone. What was your experience like? Or I'm thinking about bottom surgery. I don't know what that means for me. Or even like, how do I start a process like this? Or how do I talk to my family about this? Or what happens if somebody is not accepting? Or how do I deal with all of like the political pressure that is happening? How do I choose what bathroom to go into? How do I protect myself? How do I still celebrate myself and find joy? And I feel like all of those things that, even though the internet has been incredible for helping connect us, that there is something so special about just getting to talk with somebody, whether it be a virtual group, whether it be in person group, just talking with somebody else in community and having that shared sense of, even if we're not having the same exact experience, there's a piece of this that you get inherently, fundamentally, that you know what it's like in a way that probably nobody else in your life is fully understanding. And I think that there is something really sacred about that. And it's something that I think in queer spaces, I'm thinking about our like bars, our nightclubs, like these traditional places that queer people have gathered. I think that that is part of what makes those spaces sacred. And that sacredness can occur in group therapy too, giving ourselves grace and being with each other in community and giving each other grace. That is something that is so special. And group therapy is a conduit for that in a way that, especially if you can't find anybody else in your life to talk to, group could be the place to meet your community face to face. Having a therapist who is trans, that is something that I feel like I do see happen for the first time a lot of times. And that I think for a lot of people, it's kind of this revelatory experience where we can have a shorthand. In the same way, I think for anyone who shares minority identities with a therapist for the first time, it just is that exhale of like, there's some pieces I just don't have to explain anymore. Whether it be my therapist also is a single parent, whether it be a racial minority identity, whether it be like I am with a therapist who also has a disability, like whatever it is. And a lot of times I think people seek that out because I really want somebody that I just don't have to explain the fundamentals to of what this means, or not going to ask questions that it's like someone outside of the community might ask. Someone in the community, there is a joint language. And again, which I mentioned earlier, that language is kind of our superpower as humans. Whenever you're able to use heuristics and shorthand with language, I think there is this like a little bit of spark that happens when it's just like community parlance that is occurring. And it's something that is very cool to have. And I think that that is one of the reasons why people who are trans like will seek out a trans therapist or seek out trans group members. And especially if it's their first time face to face communicating with somebody else who's part of the community, just being able to use our language together is a cool thing.
Yeah, that's so true. You describe your practice as sex positive, kink positive, and poly aware. How do you think about creating a group space that reflects that framework? What do safety and inclusion look like in practice?
Absolutely. So when I think about what it means to be like sex positive, kink positive, poly aware, that I think part of it is having a lexicon, part of it's having a basic understanding. Part of it, I think a lot of people who operate within those frames are either sex therapists, which I am, or have some lived experience regarding like polyamory, for example, or kink. And also that I think a huge part of maintaining those elements within a practice is to be able to treat this like any other topic. I think that that's the thing that really designates like who is a sex, not just who is a sex therapist, but who works with clients around sex, because sex is everywhere in our society. Everyone talks about it, even if you are asexual, even if you're sex repulsed. I don't know how you're going to get away from it. And even if you're having an experience in aversion to it, you're still experiencing that thing. Let's talk about it as people, like any other question. And I think that that really, like that moment has defined for me what it means to be sex positive, kink positive, poly aware. And that is the ethos that I want to bring to groups. And I think what makes groups sex positive, kink positive, poly aware is people are talking about kink the same way that you would talk about just like vanilla sex or talk about like penis and vagina sex as like the sex that we all talk about in society. Okay, so you have a foot fetish, or we're going to be talking about shibari and we're talking about rope work, or we're talking about what it means to think about like impact play, for example, or we're talking about different partners and we're talking about your polycule, or we're talking about sex just as a concept in society. If you can talk about these things freely and establish a norm within your group that we are going to talk about this as any other topic and start trying to dismantle where does the shame come up, where does the guilt come up, where does all of the things we've been taught in society about this and how we have to keep it as a taboo, where does that come up? If we can start naming those aspects, naming the shame, naming the taboo, and slowly dismantle it, and just think about how do we talk about anything else? Why can't we talk about sex that way? I think that that completely changes the dynamic and changes the ethos of how you're approaching sex and sexuality. And it's one of the things that I really work hard with clients around, especially for clients that feel embarrassed or ashamed. Shame is always, always, always at the heart of what makes things the hardest because we carry shame from society, from our upbringing, from our teaching, from everything, because society has paired sex and shame together. And our work in therapy, whether it be in group or individual therapy, is to dismantle it. And in group therapy, the really special thing is we can help each other. It is everybody with all of their relationship structures in the room, everyone with all of their experience with sex and with kink and with poly and all these different things. And it means that they can rely on each other to help dismantle the shame. And if you can do that, you can talk about sex in group and individual, and you can talk about expansiveness with sex. And that's one of the things that I really love is figuring out how do you bust shame in any context. This happens to be a context that societally we've decided there's a lot of shame around.
Just to follow up, do you find like the issue of shame around sex is different, whether it's in intensity or like in kind, like between the LGBTQ community and like just straight people?
It's a really good question. So I think a lot of people in queer community have had to make their own sex ed, have had to figure out this stuff, have had to be bold, have had to ask questions, have had to experiment in a way that if your sex is the type of sex that you could turn on an HBO show and see, or your sex is the type of sex that you are unwillingly sitting through a sex ed class in like seventh grade about, that chances are you've probably heard a lot more about it. And so I think that there definitely is, for some people in queer community, more openness regarding it just because there has been so much more sort of self exploration that has had to be done. on the flip side, there's probably some more shame that's baked in because if society is shaming your sex, and that's the reason why your sex doesn't show up places, that's an additional layer of shame that's being carried around with you. And I think one of the interesting things is if you boil it down and strip it away, the same type of sex can happen between people who are cisgender, people who are straight, people who are queer, people who are trans. Like the same type of sex can happen in all situations. And I could easily talk to a polycule that is all queer trans people. I could talk to a polycule that is like cis straight people. I could talk about kink and the same kinks in with people that are holding different identities. That I can talk about sex and everyone can enjoy missionary or everyone could enjoy the wildest kink. And I think that can happen regardless of identity. It's people's exposure, people's normalization of my sex is good sex, and the different societal pressures around it. I think that's the thing that changes. And that there's some things that I think open the door a little bit more because there is less prescription that has happened regarding what queer sex looks like because there's just less information and people are talking about it less and you're kind of DIYing it more. And also there's more shame in some ways.
You use acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, as a lens in your one-on-one psychotherapy. And you mentioned that you also bring it into your group work. How does ACT translate in a group format? What does it look like when it's working?
So I guess backing up for a second to how I found ACT. So I teach a little bit. I teach case conceptualization. And when I think about your professional orientation, I think a lot of times universities don't do a good job of explaining why we need this or what this means. So when you think about your orientation, it should come from you first and foremost. And the way I explain it to students is like, this is basically just the way you see the world. It is your inherent understanding of how people work. And when you find your orientation, it's going to be the orientation that you listen to it and you're like, yeah, that just makes sense to me. This flows with my own ethos and my own understanding of humans. And that's going to be your skeleton for what all of the client information goes on. And you need that skeleton because that skeleton is what's going to help you take your client's goals and figure out how to build the bridge to get there. Because your orientation and the fact that there's literature on it is where you're going to find different methods of treatment. It's where you're going to find interventions. It's where you're going to find support. It's where you're going to find theory. But your job, first and foremost, before you are even putting client information on that skeleton and walking it across the bridge to your client's goals, is to figure out what resonates. I sat in my first ACT class with Dr. Master Pasqua, who is like an ACT genius, and he started describing it, and he described ACT as embrace your demons, follow your heart. And he's like, that's all ACT is. The rest of the semester, we're going to pad this out, but that is the heart of ACT. And I was like, this makes sense to me. ACT is like, your thoughts are your thoughts. Your experiences are your experiences. And your job is to say, how can I, holding all of my stuff, given the fact that I am not my stuff and my stuff is not me, figure out what I care about and move in that direction in the present moment. And that is all ACT is. When I'm working both in individual sessions and in group sessions, values, the idea of what you care about is what drives you. It's what drives you to make connections. It's what helps you make choices. All of these things you're doing because you care about something and want to move towards the thing you care about. And I think the beauty of group and how it works in group is we all come in with different things we care about. And our job collectively is to figure out what are our demons that we need to embrace, how do we help each other embrace them, and then how do we support each other in following our hearts. Because you have so many more people supporting you in group who can uplift those values and help you figure out what points you in the direction you want to go. I talk about my orientation as ACT through a feminist lens, which gives me a big old scope in order to do a bunch of other things that are not in like traditional ACT. And also one of the things I love about ACT is ACT accommodates that. That ACT has so much Buddhist philosophy in it that it is so much about like universal truth and universal suffering and what it means to find connection, what it means to make your own meaning, that there is also so much space to be like, and we're doing this within a larger power structure and we have to be mindful of this. And of course, this shapes what we care about. And working with our values is also moving in a direction that is like anti-prejudice, for example. And how do we dismantle these systems if they're not aligned with our values? Like all of this flows because ACT flows, because feminist therapy flows. And so tapping into how you feel about the thing, that's what's going to point you where you need to go.
Your research focuses on factors that inform both prejudice and resilience. What has that research taught you about what actually protects people? And does group therapy play a role there?
So I'll start at the end and work backwards. So group therapy plays a role because community is the biggest factor in resilience. Having a community, having people around you, having people who can understand or are willing to take the time to understand, I think that is the thing that makes people resilient. I am in the middle of doing a qualitative analysis of the stories of trans folks who were or are fans of Harry Potter. Harry Potter is an incredibly complicated topic in the trans community because of J.K. Rowling and because of all of the transphobia that is coming out, and because of the fact that she is using money from Harry Potter to fund anti trans legislation in the UK, and it is galvanizing politicians in the US to further their anti trans policies. The fact that the person who created it and created this story that for so many people they took out of it acceptance and love and the idea of doing the right thing in the face of hardship and what it means to overcome evil and what it means to band together and find your found family. The fact that this same story was written by somebody who was then taking that money and using it to fund anti trans legislation. A lot of my work is about what does it mean to hold that cognitive dissonance and to figure out how to move forward. And there's a couple of things that have been true. One is that everyone feels very strongly about not giving J.K. Rowling any more money. The other big universal truth is the thing that is helping people is a sense of like, I know who I am. And that I have found other people, even if I am nervous to talk to them about Harry Potter, even if like there are some things we don't agree on, the fact that I love my community so much and want to be with my community so much that I'm willing to figure out what to do with this important part of myself in the past, this love of Harry Potter, this fandom, that I can no longer hold in the same way. My community is more important. And my community is what keeps me going. And I think that those are the two big pieces, not funding any more harm and also loving and cherishing community and being a part of community. That's the push forward. And so when I think about that in terms of group and in terms of research, that if community is the most important thing that is helping people move forward, group is a place for it.
It's like you're offering an alternative in a way. In some ways, I'm a huge fan of BTS right now. I'm a new BTS fan.
That's so exciting. So about the fandom, always about fandom.
I don't just love BTS. I love being a fan. You know, it's what you're talking about. It's like I feel like I belong in a community. I'm sharing a joy with all these other people, and they understand my enthusiasm.
Why Harry Potter had such a queer and trans fandom is because those were a bunch of kids, especially I'm thinking about millennials, who were like growing up at the same time that the book series is coming out and the movies were coming out, and were the same age as the characters. That I think, especially for queer and trans kids, even if they were not actually in the story, they were reading themselves into the story. And suddenly, even if they didn't have access to other queer community, they had access through these characters. And here is going to be my found family. I'm finding it within the fandom. And then they connect with other fans. And it's a way to talk to other people in their life who may not understand their identities, but do understand Harry Potter. And I think that that is why in the research there is this pain. One is Harry Potter fan, the other is being trans. And they are being put, even if they were not originally tied, they are now being tied deeply and are being put directly.
Right.
And community is really what I'm searching for, even if it can't be in Harry Potter. When people don't have an in-person community, that's when parasocial relationships are most important. And I think that that's the interesting thing about group, is especially for people who have had parasocial relationships as their primary community, suddenly you are dropping somebody into community.
Yeah.
No matter what type of group it is, the community is there and it's their job to reach out. And I think that's why group is so special for people. Here is this in-person or live community. I'm thinking about when I go to like, as like a goth kid, I'm almost always dressed in some gothic attire. And that idea of like, if I recently went to like My Chemical Romance or Evanescence and just like getting on the train and you see like all of the goths descend on the train car because they're all going to the concert together, suddenly you're in community. Even if it is transient community, community is still important. The beautiful thing about group is it's community where you have this commonality and depth that you're building.
Intimacy.
Intimacy.
Yeah. So, as board president of PAGPS, what's your vision for where the society goes next, especially for clinicians who work with underserved and marginalized communities, such as the one you work with?
So I think the first thing is helping people come together, helping PAGPS be the sort of organization that brings people in. And I think part of it is that people need to know about PAGPS. That if people don't know about PAGPS, how do people know that we are a community? How do they know that we are a community that wants to represent them, wants to hear their voices, wants to move closer to their values? And so I think that that is the first big thing, especially for people working with underserved communities and for people with marginalized identities, is we want to and are working to be the sort of organization that you can be proud of, that aligns with your values. And so as part of that, it is getting more voices on the board. That's something that I really want to do, is expand our board and to also distribute labor in terms of that and making sure that everybody feels like this is sustainable. I feel like that's one of the big challenges with organizations is so often they have brilliant ideas and it's unsustainable. And so I think sustainability is a big piece of what PAGPS is working on. We are also working on, we have individual members and giving more to our members, making sure that people feel like they're getting value from their connection to PAGPS. So doing more social events, making sure that the CEs are relevant and what people want to hear, making sure they can advertise their groups, making sure they can form community through the listserv, and creating all of these pockets in different ways that their voice can be amplified, their skills can be amplified, and that they feel in community and in connection. And I think that also then we are trying to expand potentially and have like agency memberships. What does it mean to open more doors and pull in more people through the places they're already connected? And so I think that's another big kind of initiative that we're working on right now. And so between all of this, I think connectivity, and I think we talked about a little bit earlier what it means that PAGPS is an affiliate. So we're an affiliate again of the American Group Psychotherapy Association. And that part of that is that there is this national organization that you can be connected to. PAGPS is going to be the local door that gets you there. And so thinking about PAGPS as kind of one nodule in this much larger tapestry, that one of the things that I really want to keep doing as president of PAGPS is helping people be aware of how many resources they have. Greater Philadelphia area for PAGPS, we are representing Delaware, we're representing like Southern New Jersey, we're representing most of Pennsylvania. And anybody who can reach us, like we are happy to have you. And also, if you are outside those areas, we want to connect you with your local affiliate. And we want to see you at AGPA and Connect, which is the big conference through AGPA, which happens in different areas of the country. This coming year, it's going to be in Colorado during the last week of February 2027. In addition to giving our members value, in addition to distributing labor, in addition to making sure that there's both social events and CE events to help people with their continuing education. I think the other piece is that we want to connect you up to this larger national network so you know that you're not alone. And if you're looking for resource, even if we don't have it, somebody out there does. And how can we be the conduit so you can have the sort of experience running groups that you deserve?
Is there something about you, Jacob, that none of the PAGPS board members know you wish you had the opportunity to share with them that maybe doesn't come up during board meetings?
I think one of the things that feels integral to who I am is magic. It's this idea that magic is everywhere, it is in everything. I'm explaining it as science is magic that we think we understand, and magic is science that we don't have an explanation for yet. And that is my life philosophy on which pretty much everything is based. And it's this idea that like nature is magic and being in touch with nature is so important. It's the idea of play is magic. It's why I love games like Dungeons and Dragons and other systems because it is this opportunity to use and to connect with magic. And I think especially through like fantasy, for example, this idea that magic is everywhere and we can tap into it. I talk about therapy as slow magic. That is what I do with people. It's what I weave with people. And it's us being in community. How do we together create something that has never been? And even if you can't see it, you can feel it and you can do something with it. And you can take your slow magic and help other people create their own magic. And I feel like this idea that magic is part of everything, it's part of me. And I always have my third eye on me. And it's this idea that in terms of how I look at the world, there is always something that is unseen by our five senses. What does it mean to get in touch with something else that can perceive a little bit deeper and a little bit further? And even if it's not necessarily a fun fact about me, I think it is my underlying philosophy. And I think it explains a lot about why I love the work I do, why I love the fandoms and the games, and why I love pets and why I love nature and why I love to travel, because there is magic in all of those things. And I think there is magic in community, and it's why I love group.
My God, Jacob, you're killing me. Okay, that was beautiful. Can you say that thing again about you had this like phrasing of like magic and science and magic. Could you say that again?
Sure, that science is magic that we think we understand, and magic is science that we don't have language for yet. And I feel like this entire conversation has literally just been like Jacob's philosophy on life. And the fact that like act and magic and game, like, yep, this is all just like what I talk about all day, every day. You.
I find this culture doesn't nurture pro group thinking. So many of my classmates, like I have yet to meet a classmate at Bryn Mawr who is like into group therapy as me. You know,
Sarah.
yeah, even the people like I took the group therapy class with under Tom's instruction, like even though they've gotten this like theoretical, foundations, knowledge, they still want to just practice one-on-one. They're just not that excited about it group. And I'm like, that's kind of my end game. My end game is group. My end game is not doing one-on-one therapy. Like that's, yeah.
I mean, I loved what you said about like I'm learning how to do one-on-one therapy so I can get to group. That is the orientation that works for me. That's where I want to go.
Yeah, yeah. And people who don't even have the class, they hate group therapy. They literally tell me, I hate doing it at my internship. It's a waste of time. They feel like they're babysitting. They're taking the load off their supervisors, basically. And it's not even the group therapy course being elective and not a mandatory. That's not the worst part. I think most people in the United States are so individualistic. They think the individual starts first.
True that we are all from our culture. We're all from the groups
Yes.
that we start in. And
Yep.
that idea, and it's sort of this kind of wild backwards notion that like individualism is key because individualism comes from the group. It comes from the community culture. It is a culture of individualism. And as a group, we have all decided we're going to be individualistic. I feel like your description of like the other people in your cohort who are like, I hate group. I feel like I'm babysitting. I feel like I don't know anything. They're probably speaking truth because that is your experience of group. You are being told to go in there and babysit. You have no tools. You're not sure why. You were potentially raised in an individualistic culture. A lot of the people in the room probably also raised in an individualistic culture, being like, what are we doing here? We are just killing 3 hours because we have to be here 3 hours a day, 3 times a week. And so we're just going to stare at each other or do a workbook or whatever. And it's like, but there's so much more that could be happening. And if you hate it, everyone else in the room is also going to hate it. And if you don't have the skills and you're told like your job is to babysit, everyone is going to feel like they're being babysat. And it's going to suck for everybody. And then you're going to be like, okay, what I really want to do is private practice, one-on-one clients, and I never want to do this again. And then you will never take a class and never read a book and you'll never do it. And I think that's why group is kind of in trouble right now because that is kind of the education model is like toss the intern into group because no one else wants to do it. But the intern has no experience and is given no support around it.
You're absolutely right. Even the patients are thinking that they're getting second tier
Yeah.
treatment. It's a scarcity mindset. Like you're having to share the time of a therapist. You're only getting this much instead of this much. Yeah. Yeah.
And individual therapy, you get the whole pie and it's all for you. So, of course, that's better. And it goes back to that individualistic mindset. And what happens if it's like, but wait, we have a collective wisdom here? That is a very different frame. And it feels like you have seen like the magic of that. You have tapped into that frame in a way that it sounds like almost no one else in your program is tapping into. And I
Yeah.
feel like the big question that PAGPS needs to answer at some point, and we all collectively need to answer, is like, how do we help people tap into that magic, given that a lot of the people in the programs are going to be in individualistic cultures, and a lot of the patients are, and given the fact that we don't talk about the power of collection and things like that, like, how do we convince people of that? And I think it is giving people the tools to then experience it for themselves.
And that's it for my conversation with Jacob. I want to thank Jacob Glickman for an amazing chat. I learned so much while having this conversation with him. I hope you enjoyed it too. Join us next time for another interview with a board member from the PAGPS. Thanks for listening.